Good day, goeiedag, fellow South Africans, and I'm putting together a series of short video clips to actually present to you something that I, as a historian, have a terrible, I have a huge problem with, and that is the manner in which museums in South Africa are being maintained. And we've talked about affirmative action before and the impact it's had in places like SARS and basically everywhere in South Africa. One of the issues that a lot of people don't realize is that South African history, and we're talking largely white history in museums, it's been slowly destroyed. The museums are now largely run by African curators, and basically people who come and visit the museums, if they're in the know, they can go to the curator and say, hey, I'll pay you X for that. And things just disappear. And I'm going to give you some evidence which supports what I'm talking about here. But in the first case, I want to show you a terrible situation that happened in Griquatown. Now, Griquatown is a very historic town. It's actually the first settlement of people north of the Orange River, and it dates back to the early 1800s. And obviously, the Griqua people lived there because that's why it's called Griquatown. But Hetta Haga was the curator of the Griquatown Museum, called the Mary Moffat Museum, and you can Google it, for over 30 years. The museum was absolutely kept in pristine condition. And as you'll see from the video, she's an elderly lady now, and she has retired, but she offered to continue to come in and manage the museum. But the museum board said, no, we've got a replacement for you. And I'm not joking. The replacement they put in was the African lady who cleaned the museum. I'll repeat that. The new curator of the Mary Moffat Museum is the African lady who cleaned the museum. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, what follows is a short clip where I'm talking to Hetta Haga in the museum. But God knows, this was taken in 2011, so God knows what's happened to the museum since then. Okay, there'll be some more clips after this.
I hope that in an afterlife I never meet David Livingstone, because I'm going to kill him. What we do to his poor wife. Yeah. Always off, coming back, making a child, and off into Africa again.
Yeah, she had quite a few affairs, didn't she?
She did.
Mary Livingstone.
She was always drunken, I think.
Yeah.
That's the first.
It's strange that a missionary's daughter would be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. She'd always been. She was but 9 years old when she left her parents' home.
Oh, really?
Yes, for Grahamstown.
Oh.
And she and they.
As I mentioned earlier, most of this footage is from 2011, but you can only guess that the museums have deteriorated dramatically in the last 7 years. The next museum I'm going to display is the famous Mafeking Siege Museum. Now, what I want you to take out of this little clip are two things. Firstly, the focus from the siege of Mafeking has completely changed to a whole lot of posters promoting black history in the main room. And all the siege material, when I was there in 2011, had been put into a back room. It was all sort of squashed up together. And the light in the room didn't work. It was dark. You couldn't see a bloody thing. When I spoke to the curator, the African lady who was a curator of the Siege Museum, she said, oh yeah, the light broke months ago, But I have a torch. You can use this torch. And she actually offered me a torch to go and look at what's in that room, which is the siege material. That's how crazy it is. Anyway, we'll continue on our journey. There's still a few museums to go. As we pan around, you can see that old church there. I don't know what this train has as far as significance is concerned, but we start seeing some stuff when we see the monument to commemorate all the British who were killed during the siege. And over here we have the actual Mafeking Museum. And we're going to go and have a look in there now. Here we are inside the Mafeking Museum, and believe it or not, we're not supposed to take any photographs, but bugger it. This place is really, in the last 5 years since I was here, it deteriorated dramatically. Some of the beautiful relics that used to be here just seem to have disappeared, and now we have a room full of posters and a little bit of the old silverware from the back then, which is good. And we've actually got a gun or two lying around the place. But most of it now is all about the black chiefs, and they had nothing to do with the siege of Mafeking, which was the whole thrust of this museum. They do have a room at the back where the lights don't work, and they've stuck all their siege stuff in there, and we can't even see it because it's too dark, which is really useful, seeing we've come 500 kilometers to have a look at that stuff. Now, that's pretty disgusting what they're doing to the Mafeking Museum, but believe me, it gets worse from here. That's only a starting point. What we're going to look at now is a longer video clip, which is largely cut. I've only taken some key parts of my main video on this. But it's what is happening at the Kuruman mission, which is now a national monument and a museum. There's a black African curator there, and I went back there again in 2011. I'd been there in 2006, and the place in that period of time had just gone, as you'll see from the video footage, which proves it. Now, that was 7 years ago. So you wonder what it would be like there today. And I'm not just talking about the way the gardens are maintained, or the way the historic houses are now being occupied by the curator. I'm talking more about the theft aspect. And you will see clear evidence in this video that follows that the coin that Robert Moffat carried with him all his life has been stolen. The empty case is all that is left. When I was there in 2006, the coin was in that case, sitting on top, and it's gone. And this is what's happening to white South African history. It's been sold off to the highest bidder by African curators in these museums. Now, here comes the video. And I find it very disturbing, but I'll let you watch and consider what you think. Here we are at the Moffat mission station, and I'm standing behind the pulpit of Moffat's church, and that's the original church. We're looking down from the pulpit. These two wings, which I'll pan across to, the one on the left and the one on the right, were added later because of the success of his church, and the church is 150 years old, so it's quite an amazing bit of history. Is a board with all the members of, or the ministers who preached here at Kuruman, at Robert Moffat's church. And if we scroll down, we can see it's quite a long list. And it stopped in 1962, sadly, but yeah, it's quite a history there, and some very interesting names. In fact, you'll see David Livingstone amongst them, near the top. And obviously Robert Moffat and James Reed, who were some of the first missionaries who ever came to central South Africa. And where I was standing just now when I started this little clip was behind that pulpit, which Moffat used to stand behind. And unfortunately you can see that they really don't care in this place anymore. It's a black curator, and we discovered that the famous half crown that Moffat carried around with him all his life, which used to be in the Moffat house next door, has now been stolen. It was here when I was here in 2006, but obviously it was too small and portable, and seeing that there's no security, his famous half crown has now been taken. It's just an empty little case with a comment that this coin was used or carried around by Moffat all his life, and of course the coin is gone. But that's what happens when things aren't looked after properly, when you have a curator who doesn't care. And that's what's happening all over South Africa with some of these beautiful old historic monuments. So there you go. This is just another quick shot of the church taken from the back entrance. And interesting, there's a pigeon here in the roof, you can probably see, which is quite interesting. Where is he? There he is. A pigeon in Moffat's church. That is the first house that Livingstone lived in South Africa, and believe it or not, even though it's a national monument, it has now been lived in as a dwelling place by the curator of this establishment, which is totally run down. It's absolutely shocking. I'm just walking a few yards and you can see the water trough that Moffat built back in the 1820s. Look at the condition of it. You know, this is sort of stuff that they should be looking after. The church has got broken windows. It's got all sorts of stuff missing from it. It's absolute disgrace, and it's a lot worse than it was when I was here 4 years ago. The only thing that really has survived is a little empty spot where the coin used to sit. This is the inside of Livingstone's room, I guess when he was a bachelor here in 1852, and you can see there's nothing valuable here to steal, so everything still seems to be in place. What we're finding is that where there is anything valuable, the little comment is left, but whatever was valuable has gone. So you have a little bit of piece of paper saying, here was this, or here was that, or here's the original Bible done in Tswana, and there's just an empty box above it, but the label's still there. Okay, we couldn't leave Moffat's mission without showing you something which is really very disturbing. This is a cabinet. In 2006 I saw most of the stuff that's in this cabinet, which you can see is locked. But look at that. In 2006 when I was here, the coin was there. Now it's an empty little case talking about this George III half crown of 1817 given to Robert Moffat by his father when he left home to be a missionary in Africa that year. He never spent it, but he carried it with all his life. It's gone. It's gone. And there's so much other stuff that's gone. There's a hymn book that was printed by Robert Moffat in 1838 in Setswana. I wonder if it'll be here when I come back next time, because that's a very valuable item too. Here you can actually see things that have just disappeared. Last century's trader beads and the century's pennies found at the mission. It's just disgusting. Over here we're coming to a very famous tree. It's where Dr. Livingstone proposed to Mary Moffat, the daughter of Robert Moffat, the missionary. And you can see this little plaque up here which talks about at one point yet. I think talks about the background to his meeting Mary Moffat, and over here we have the actual plaque talking about the let's get out of there. About the almond tree. Yeah, that's the almond tree there. I've got to be pointy. I can't see a thing. And here's the tree, the very famous tree where thousands of people since have proposed to each other, but that is a tree under which Livingstone proposed to Mary Moffat, and that's all that's left of it today, and I guess that's age, but there you go. Okay, I promise you this is my last little gripe, but if you look at what's in front of us, that is, or is supposed to be, a little water trough coming down into the garden, and you can just see they're just letting it go. The walls are falling over, the weeds growing in it. They don't even try and put some water in to sort of replicate how it used to be. Look at this tree that they've chopped down, and it's now sitting on top of it. It's absolutely shocking. Robert Moffat is probably turning in his grave if he knew what they were doing. We're on the road to Danielskale, and you can see the vegetation is very dry. This is a shout out to anyone who lives in Bloemfontein. You all know where the State Presidency Museum is, the original State Presidency building. When I was there in 2011, I took this video footage that follows. And you'll see that a huge number of historic items have been stolen. You've got these empty cabinets which used to be full of stuff. Not only that, but the whole time I was there, which is well over an hour, there were several people who obviously worked there, locked behind their doors, on phones, talking. There was no one to say, hello, can we show you around or whatever. They don't care. Just understand that. They don't care about white South African history. They are destroying it. It's been stolen. It is very subtle, and the African curator here at the Bloemfontein State Presidency, the whole time I was there, which is over an hour, he was on the phone. Obviously a very, very important call. But before we actually look at the State Presidency, we'll have a look at the state of the street and also the original spring that Bloemfontein is named after. But right after that, I have a short interview with a lady who is looking after cars in Bloem, because it's the only job she can get, and it's a white lady. And she is complaining that in 12 years, her income has never increased. Her salary has never increased. And here she's playing a key role looking after the cars of the tourists who are supposed to be coming into the Bloem historic area. But I'll let you watch the video, make your own assessments, but do have a look at those empty cabinets. It tells you where these African curators are taking white South African history. Okay, and there's some more to come. Here we are in Bloemfontein, and we're at the visitor centre because we want to find things. That's what a visitor centre is for, I thought. Well, let's have a look at the visitor centre in Bloemfontein. The visitor centre has this gorgeous little courtyard, and behind these stable doors are the actual visitor centre. Let's go and have a look. Here's a coffee shop. Very quaint, I've got to admit, but pretty basic. And then we walk down a corridor, and this is about the only place we've actually discovered in Bloem so far, the visitor centre. And they've got a kitchen here, and boy, did they have a party last night. There must be some very, very tired people this morning. And here we have it, the visitor centre. And look, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, and there it is. It's behind a locked door, and whoa,
There's no one here, but there's a lunch sign over there. Maybe they're out to lunch. Maybe they started very early and... But look, all this information and no one who can help us. So we're going to go exploring Bloem, not knowing what we're doing. Thank you, Visitor Centre. This is the historic President Brand Street. I'm standing in the middle of the road. It's in Bloemfontein, and it has the most magnificent old historic buildings, and we're going to be visiting a few of them. There's one of them just across there, but we'll have a closer look now. This is all that remains of the spring or fontaine that Bloemfontein is named after. The actual eye of the spring was totally destroyed by grazing, and there used to be something like 450,000 litres a day. All that's left now is this tiny little channel with this little spring of water coming through.
Yes.
I've worked here for
12 years.
Yeah.
The money is still the same. It didn't went up. It just went bad.
How much do you get paid a week?
I don't know. I can't say.
But it's not much.
Not much, yes.
Yeah, and so do you actually look after this place?
No, I'm working with the cars, only with the cars.
Ah, so you're actually a
Yes.
car security person.
Yes, yes.
I see. And yeah, okay. And are there a lot of car security people here?
We are only 3. There was another lady, but she died last year in November.
Oh, okay.
I went together with her to the school.
So they haven't replaced her?
No, we can't
Okay.
because we didn't make much here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. We're in the old Presidency building, and you can see the new curator of the Afrikaans Presidency is Thabo Tlomabelo, and he's on the phone through there. And just like the Paul Kruger Museum, this beautiful old building has absolutely no one keeping an eye on it. We're just wandering through. We haven't seen anyone. This is what's happening in South Africa. They're putting black curators in charge of beautiful old historic artifacts that have no real importance to them because they're about the Afrikaners, and that's reflected in the way that they don't look after them. It's quite tragic actually, but I guess that's the new South Africa. It's quite a stunning building. I mean, look at this floor. Deb was reading up about it earlier on, and oh God, it's so sad. This is obviously the old lounge of the old Presidency. It's behind glass, which is something, I guess, but just like at the Kuruman mission station, there are the cabinets. And you can see they're totally empty. Whatever was inside of them has probably been stolen and taken. And it's not just that one over there. It's totally empty. Isn't that sad? Isn't that bad? Oh my God.
Look at the leg of the chair with the brick underneath it.
Oh, yeah. This is renovation Free State style. You can probably see that stone underneath the leg there. And here's another pretty historic little sideboard. We're about halfway through the museum now, and this is the old kitchen. You can see it's quite stunning, even though it's a kitchen. And we're coming across evidence of people who work here, but we've yet to meet anyone. This is obviously one of the lower paid staff, but he's got all sorts of stuff in his room, and an open newspaper and a half-drunk cup of coffee. Maybe they did a runner when we came in. And you can see those 2 wires above me. That's where lights used to hang, and you can see now it's just the remnants of the connection. And there are probably about 3 of them that actually still work, hanging around here. And as I pan around the room, you can see the wires with nothing on them. Here we've got a couple that are actually still working. Wow, isn't that good? But I guess in the modern South Africa, it doesn't really matter, does it? I guess if we had a guide, we'd know what's going on, but obviously we don't, and obviously we won't, because we nearly finished the tour of the house. We know there are about 3 people in here, all on phones talking to somebody, and this looks like... Now this is probably the most telling cabinet that we've come across. It's right close to the front entrance of the Presidency, You can see where things used to stand. And guess what? Only the stands are in the cabinet. Everything else seems to have disappeared. I wonder where. This is so sad. There goes the Afrikaans history. Just disappearing into someone's back pocket somewhere. Behind this door is the only action we've heard.
Okay, the next video is a very short clip, but it's about another very highly qualified white curator looking after white history in the Port Shepstone Museum, who has been turfed out because of affirmative action. And now you've got a black, unqualified person now running the Port Shepstone Museum. And I'll let the video speak for itself.
We're here at Royston House, and this is a view from the upstairs. It's a beautiful place. And there's Mary Neethling from the... you're no longer at the Port Shepstone Museum, or you're still there?
No, I was put out for affirmative action.
Retirement, okay. Affirmative action, okay,
affirmative action.
And Ria Hackland. Yeah, Ria Hackland, who owns this magnificent place.
Okay, I think you can see what I'm talking about. What's happening in the museums around South Africa is incompetency because of affirmative action, the theft of historic treasures, which relate to mainly white history, because they're the ones who recorded their history and innovated things, and the way the curators have absolutely no respect for what they're supposed to be looking after. And yet they have these privileged positions and don't care. In fact, that guy in Kuruman, when I was there, he never ever came out. I walked right through the whole place. I could have taken whatever I wanted, except for the locked cabinets, of course. But he was watching a soccer match. And I know this because I could hear him cheering and his family cheering when someone scored a goal or whatever, from one of the houses, which is a national monument. This is the reality of how disrespected white South African history is today, because it's in the hands of African curators who are there because of affirmative action. Now, but before I close off, I have to tell you that there are some gleaming diamonds amongst all this crap that I've shown you. The last video I'm going to attach to is one of them. But there are places like the Voortrekker Museum, which is beautifully maintained. Guess what? It's run by white people. Take the other side of that, and if you live in Pretoria, or Tshwane, or whatever they call it now, if you live in Pretoria, I challenge you to go to Paul Kruger's house and do a video for me. And I'm telling you why, because when I was there in 2011, there was now an African guy. I think he was a curator. I think he might have just been the guy that you had to pay to go in. But there was no one else there, and there's all this historic stuff. And you could see where people have been stealing it. I mean, I've been to Kruger's house a few times, and I could see where stuff had been taken. You know, they're like empty areas on tables, which used to be full. There's no control. There's a huge amount of theft going on in white South African history, happening right now, under your eyes. And as I say, I challenge someone who subscribes to my channel to go to Paul Kruger's house in Pretoria and record what they see. Because what I saw in 2011 was shocking. And I'm sure it's a lot worse now. Now, getting back to the gems. Okay. The gems include obviously the Voortrekker Museum, which is beautifully maintained. There is, in Bloem, funnily enough, the first Parliament building is absolutely immaculately maintained. Guess what? There's a white female curator, but she's elderly. And one wonders what's going to happen when she has to pass on to someone else. And the other example, which I'm going to attach in the video now, is, ironically, a tiny little town called Kokstad in East Griqualand. And the Kokstad Museum is absolutely beautifully maintained. It's run by a white committee, and Milner Snell, who's a friend of mine, is actually heading up that committee, and it is, if you ever go through East Griqualand, you've got to stop off at Kokstad and have a look at the Kokstad Museum. It is beautiful. And I'll just play a little bit of video of the Kokstad Museum. But my whole reason for putting this video out there is because South Africa's early history is being destroyed. The African curators are not interested in South African history predating 1994. Okay? Just get that in your head. They don't give a stuff. Okay. And remember, this Monday, Black Monday, 29th of October, I'll put the links below. Please become involved, and please subscribe to my channel so you can be kept informed. Take care, guys. I hope you enjoy the videos.
This is the entrance to the Kokstad Museum, which is beautifully kept, and there's a lot of great stuff in here. I'll just have a quick tour around. You can see firstly some brochures there, but some of the first items that are of particular interest are these old title deeds, which are signed by Adam Kok, and they have the Griquatown seal on, which is very, very rare today, and there are not many of these. Now, those were the title deeds issued by the new Griqualand government, and that picture up there shows you the farms that they actually issued. But there are a few more of them in this cabinet over here, as well as pictures of Adam Kok. You can see them under the glass with the seals on. There's a copy of Dower's original 1902 book. I'm not sure if it has the banknote in, but it's a hard copy edition. And over here we have some of the gear used by the headman of the Griquas. And isn't that beautiful, that little cabinet there? And of course the famous sculpture of Adam Kok III, and little plaque that goes with it. And this is the gear that Adam Kok used in one of his meetings with the British, and you can see the very fancy shoulder pads which went with the gear. And that's a traditional Griqua outfit. You can see the Boer kappie, or the white hat on the head and the white clothing.